I don't know if it started that afternoon, or if it had been there all along, quietly building in places I didn't notice. What I do know is that it wasn't supposed to happen, at least not to me, not with her. It was a Thursday, the kind of ordinary day you don't expect to remember. I'd stopped at a small coffee shop I liked because it was always half empty, with chairs that looked borrowed from a church basement. I went there when I didn't want to be seen, when I wanted to sink into the background, drink something hot, and let time pass without anyone noticing. She was already there. Sitting by the window, a paperback resting face down on the table, her hands circling the rim of her cup like she was listening to music no one else could hear. My best friend's girlfriend. I had only seen her in the loudness of parties, or at his place, where she seemed slightly apart from everyone, as if she'd stepped into the wrong movie but stayed anyway. She noticed me first. Or maybe she'd been aware all along. Either way, she lifted her eyes, the kind that made you hesitate mid-step, and gave the smallest smile, like she wasn't sure if she should. "Hey," I said, too soft at first, then again, louder, as I slid into the chair across from her without asking if it was taken. She tilted her head. "You always get the same thing, don't you?" I blinked. "What?" "The medium latte. No sugar. You stir it, but you never add anything. Habit, I guess." It startled me more than it should have, that she remembered something I didn't think anyone ever noticed. My best friend, her boyfriend, wouldn't have. He wasn't the type to see details like that. I laughed awkwardly, rubbing at the sleeve of my jacket. "Guess I'm boring." She shook her head, just once. Predictable isn't the same as boring. We sat in the kind of silence that isn't really silence. Cups clinked in the background, a barista called out a name, someone dropped coins into the tip jar. I kept my hands around my cup though it had cooled, trying not to look like I was staring at hers, her fingers tracing the book cover, the way she tucked her hair back with absent-minded grace. "Do you come here often?" I asked, immediately regretting how cliché it sounded. "Sometimes. When I want quiet." She glanced toward the window, the street outside already turning gold with late afternoon light. "It's harder to find than you think." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if she meant the quiet in the cafe or somewhere deeper. Something about her presence unsettled me, not in a bad way, but in the way a song does when it sounds like it knows your secret. My best friend had introduced us months ago, and back then I'd thought she seemed older, not just in years but in the way she carried herself. Mid-40s maybe, compared to my 20-something restlessness. But here, now, she felt closer somehow, like the space between us had shifted. I wanted to ask her why she remembered my order. I wanted to ask what she noticed about me when I wasn't looking. Instead, I folded the paper napkin in front of me into smaller and smaller squares, as if it mattered. She smiled faintly. "You think too much." I didn't answer. She was right. When she left, she didn't say goodbye in the usual way. She paused, looking like she might add something else, then walked out into the evening. I thought that was the end of it. But an hour later, sitting alone in my apartment with the folded napkin still in my pocket, my phone buzzed. A message from her. "There's something I should probably tell you. But not here." And that was the moment everything started to tilt. I told myself I wouldn't reply right away. That I'd wait until morning, until I'd had the night to think it through. But I didn't last 10 minutes. "Where?" I texted back. The dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, the park by the library. Tomorrow. Around 5. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a wooden bench with a paper bag from the bakery near the corner. The air smelled faintly of rain, though it hadn't fallen yet. "You're early," she said when I sat down beside her. "So are you." She gave a small shrug, then handed me one of the pastries from the bag. A quiet offering, like this was something we did all the time. We ate in silence, crumbs catching on our fingers. I noticed how she brushed hers off carefully, as though even the smallest mess bothered her. I wanted to tell her that I liked that about her, the way she noticed details most people ignored, but I kept it to myself. Instead, she spoke first. I used to come here when I first moved in with him. Your friend. She paused, like she wasn't sure if she should say more. Back then, I thought sitting here would help me believe this place could feel like home. But it never really worked. Her words landed quietly, heavier than she made them sound. You don't like it here? I asked. I like the park. She pressed her lips into something close to a smile. Not everything else. I didn't know how to respond, so I let the silence stretch. A boy chased pigeons across the grass. Someone's dog barked at a passing skateboarder. She folded the empty paper bag into neat, deliberate creases, like I had with that napkin the day before. The truth sat between us, the reason this was dangerous. She was with my best friend. She was older, by nearly 20 years. I could almost hear the unspoken rules rattling in my head, the way they warned against this exact kind of closeness. But the longer I sat there, the less those rules seemed to matter. She leaned back against the bench. Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something you can't name? I almost laughed at how precisely she'd put it. All the time, I admitted. That was the first personal truth I'd said aloud in a long while. It felt both too little and too much. Her gaze lingered on me, not sharp, not heavy, just steady enough to make me wish I could stay in that moment longer than I was allowed. We talked about nothing for the rest of the hour, a book she was halfway through, the bakery's uneven muffins, the weather that couldn't decide between sun and rain. But even in the ordinary, there was an edge I couldn't ignore. When she finally stood to leave, she touched my arm lightly, almost by accident. Just the brush of her fingers through my sleeve. It shouldn't have meant anything. But I kept replaying it long after she walked away. I don't know why that moment stayed with me, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. We slipped into a rhythm we never named. Coffee shop, park, sometimes just passing each other in the grocery store aisle like it was planned. It wasn't, but it felt that way. It stayed unspoken, whatever this was. Safer that way. Until one evening, when I saw her again in the cafe. Same window seat, book open but unread. Her eyes lit up briefly when I walked in, then dimmed, as if she caught herself. You're here again, I said, sliding into the chair. She stirred her tea, slow circles. I shouldn't be. I tried to joke it off. Bad pastry? But she didn't laugh. Her gaze stayed fixed on the spoon in her cup, like it carried an answer she couldn't say aloud. The silence pressed between us. Outside, the sky had gone that strange pale gray before rain. Inside, every sound seemed louder, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clatter of a dish, someone's laugh at the counter. Finally, she said it. If people saw us, she broke off, shaking her head. It wouldn't look right. I swallowed, suddenly aware of the way my knee bounced under the table. We're just talking. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. Are we? Before I could answer, the bell above the cafe door rang. My best friend walked in. He scanned the room, spotted me, then waved. I froze. She didn't. She smoothed her hands over her bag, lifted her chin like nothing was out of place. You should go to him, she said softly, almost without moving her lips. And so I did. Pretended I'd only just arrived. Pretended I hadn't been sitting across from her with my heart beating in ways it shouldn't. Later that night, she texted. That can't happen again. Not like that. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over a reply I didn't send. The next time we met, it was at the park again. Colder this time, wind pushing the leaves across the path. She sat hunched on the bench, collar pulled tight. You meant it? I asked. That we should stop. She exhaled, slow. I don't know what I meant. A jogger passed. The sound of their footsteps faded, leaving us in that suspended quiet again. "You confuse me," she admitted. I wanted to say she confused me too, that she made everything else feel dull, unimportant. But the words stuck. Instead, I reached down and picked up a twig from the ground, broke it into pieces one by one. Childish, nervous. She watched my hands, then looked away, as if the act itself said more than I could. The wind shifted. She shivered. Without thinking, I moved closer, draped my jacket over her shoulders. Our faces ended up inches apart. Too close. Her breath caught. My hand lingered at the collar of the jacket, a little longer than necessary. She leaned in, just slightly. Enough to blur the line between accident and intent. But then she pulled back, eyes wide. "We can't." The words cut through the air, final, but her voice shook in a way that told me she wasn't certain at all. And that almost meant more than if she had kissed me. We started walking after that. No cafe, no park bench, just long loops around side streets where fewer people went. Maybe it was safer to keep moving, as if standing still would make what we were doing too real. One evening, after the sky had emptied into dusk, we ended up outside a closed bookstore. The lights inside were dim, shelves turned into silhouettes. She leaned against the brick wall, arms folded, watching people pass on the other side of the street. "You didn't answer my message the other night," she said quietly. I didn't know what to say. "That makes two of us." We stood there, neither of us looking directly at the other. The air smelled faintly of rain again, same as the first time at the park. A car hissed by, headlights briefly washing over her face. She looked tired. Not in the way sleep fixes, but deeper. She exhaled, long and shaky. "You don't know what it's like, being looked at but never really seen." Smiled at, kissed even, but, her voice trailed off. She pressed her palms against her arms like she was holding herself together. I think I forgot what it felt like until, she stopped. I waited, but she didn't finish. Instead, I said the first thing that came to mind. "You don't have to explain." Her head snapped toward me, sharp. "That's the problem. I should." A silence stretched, brittle. She broke it, softer now. "You're too young to understand what it means to stay. To wake up one day and realize you're not in love anymore, but you're still there. Because it's easier than leaving." The confession hung between us like something fragile. I should have let it pass. Should have nodded and changed the subject. But I heard myself asking, "Then why do you stay?" Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked away, blinking too often, as if buying time. Finally, almost to herself, "Maybe because I'm afraid of what I'd do if I didn't." I felt it then, the crack in the wall she'd kept so carefully built. The truth she hadn't meant to give me. We stood inches apart, the sounds of the city folding into the background until it felt like there was only the two of us. I reached out without thinking, brushing a loose thread from her sleeve. My fingers lingered, not long, but long enough. Her breath hitched. Her eyes met mine, unguarded for once. It would have been easy then. Too easy. One step closer, one choice we couldn't take back. Instead, she whispered, almost like a prayer, "What are we doing?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure either. And that question stayed between us, heavier than any kiss could have been. The next week, she disappeared. No cafe. No park bench. No quiet walks where our steps fell into the same rhythm. Just absence. I told myself not to notice. But every time I passed the bakery, or the library steps, I caught myself looking. And not finding her. 3 days passed. Then 4. By the 5th, I caved and texted, "Are you okay?" No reply. I tried again the next morning. Did I do something? Still nothing. When I finally saw her, it wasn't where I expected. She was at the grocery store, pushing a cart slowly down the aisle, half reading labels she probably didn't need. She didn't see me at first. I almost called her name, but something stopped me. She looked different. Not just tired. Distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. Eventually, she turned. Recognition flickered, but instead of relief, her face tightened. Hey. Just that. Nothing else. I managed. You've been gone. She adjusted the strap of her bag, avoiding my eyes. I needed space. It shouldn't have hit as hard as it did, but it felt like someone had quietly shifted the ground under me. I started, then stopped. Never mind. Her cartwheels squeaked as she pushed forward. I followed for a few steps, until she finally sighed. It's not you. She hesitated. My daughter came to visit. She doesn't live here anymore, but when she does come, she notices things. Too much. Daughter. I hadn't known. She'd never mentioned her before. I tried to picture it, a daughter my age, maybe older. Someone who would see me with her and understand immediately what it meant. Oh, I said, because anything more would have sounded like accusation. She finally looked at me then, but her eyes were clouded. This was a mistake. The words stung, though she said them softly. Like she was trying to protect me by cutting me down. I should go, she added, already steering her cart toward the next aisle. And just like that, she was gone again. For days, I couldn't shake it. I'd unlock my phone, type half a message, then delete it. I missed the walks. Did you mean it was all a mistake? What do you want from me? None of them made it past the blinking cursor. Instead, I sat in my apartment at night, staring at the napkin I'd folded weeks ago, still tucked in my desk drawer. A stupid thing to hold on to, but it reminded me that she'd once seen me, really seen me. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. Her silence became its own kind of answer. And yet, I still found myself listening for her name in every crowded room. It was raining when she finally called. Not a text. Not a half-word left dangling. An actual call. Can you come by? Her voice was thin, like she'd been talking herself out of it before she dialed. I went without thinking. She opened the door barefoot, cardigan pulled tight, hair tied back loosely as if she hadn't planned to see anyone. The house smelled faintly of lemon soap and something cooking that had long since cooled. We stood there at the threshold a beat too long, neither moving. Finally, she stepped aside. Kitchen, she said. The table was cluttered, mail stacked unevenly, an empty mug, a scarf draped over a chair. She gestured vaguely, then busied herself at the counter, rinsing a glass that didn't need rinsing. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. You asked. That made her pause, shoulders stiff. Slowly, she turned, drying her hands on a towel. I shouldn't have. But you did. The silence that followed was sharper than anything either of us said. The kind that made you feel every breath. Finally, she sat across from me, fingers laced together on the table. I wasn't fair to you. Disappearing like that. Saying it was a mistake. She let out a breath, shaky. It's not that simple. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, waiting. She looked at me then, really looked. You matter. More than I meant for you to. And that scares me. The words sat heavy between us. My throat tightened. I'm not asking for anything, I managed. I needed to know if it was only me. Her eyes flickered, pain, relief, something I couldn't name. It's not only you. For a moment, neither of us moved. The rain tapped steadily against the window, filling the space where words should have gone. I wanted to reach across the table, to close the gap the way I'd imagined too many times. Instead, I sat still, fists curling quietly in my lap. So what now? She shook her head, eyes dropping to her hands. Now, nothing. Not the kind you want, anyway. I can't give you that. I can't blow up his life. Or mine. Or yours. The words stung, but they were honest. Brutally so. I nodded, swallowing hard. I know. We sat like that, the air thick with everything we'd admitted but couldn't act on. And then, in a moment so small it almost slipped past me, she reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Not a declaration. Not a promise. Just a quiet touch, warm and steady. I looked up. She gave me a faint, tired smile. And all I could do was whisper back the only word that fit. Okay. Time didn't end that night. It stretched forward, the way time always does, carrying us along whether we were ready or not. For a while, we stepped back. Less coffee shops, fewer walks, no more late-night texts. I told myself it was over, that we had done the right thing by pressing pause before everything collapsed. And yet, I kept the napkin in my desk drawer. She kept the folded scarf on the back of her kitchen chair. Little reminders we weren't ready to let go of. Months passed. He moved on first, though not because of us. My best friend and her ended quietly, in that way relationships sometimes do, not a storm, not a betrayal, just two people realizing they weren't built for the same future. He never asked me about her after that. Maybe he knew. Maybe he didn't. One morning, at exactly 8:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. A single message, Park. I went. She was there on the same bench, a paper bag from the bakery in her lap, tea steaming in a travel mug. The leaves had started to turn, gold and brittle at the edges. You're late, she said, even though I wasn't. Traffic, I lied. We sat, just like before. She handed me a pastry without asking what I wanted. I stirred my coffee out of habit, no sugar, no cream. She smiled faintly when she noticed, the same way she had the very first time. For a long while, we didn't talk about the in-between. Not about what had almost happened, not about what had stopped us. Instead, we talked about smaller things, the book she was reading, the new hours at the bakery, a movie I'd half watched and half forgotten. But underneath it all, there was a calm I hadn't felt before. No more hiding, no more guilt pressing down. Just two people who had finally chosen to stay. At some point, she reached into the paper bag, pulled out the last pastry, and set it in my hand. You always think too much, she said softly, like it was a private joke. I laughed, shaking my head. Maybe. Her hand lingered on mine a moment longer than necessary. Not a declaration. Not a performance. Just, us. The rain didn't come that day. The sky held steady, the kind of weather that makes you forget to look at the time. And for once, I didn't feel paused. I felt like the sentence had finally finished, even if it wasn't the way I'd pictured it. I don't know if what we had was love, at least not in the way people put it into movies or books. But I know this, sitting there with her, coffee cooling, crumbs on my jacket, the city moving on without us, I didn't want to be anywhere else. And when she turned to me, eyes catching mine, I realized we didn't need to say it. We were already there. Sparkles, did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?